For more than 5 years, a family has been searching for answers. They've shared posts online, organized campaigns, followed leads, and reached out to strangers, hoping someone, somewhere, knows something. At the center of it all is a young woman named Caitlin Dennison. Her story begins with a phone call. A short, urgent call that would become the final confirmed contact anyone ever had with her. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Famous Crime Cases, where we uncover stories that challenge what you think you know about humanity. On January 10, 2018, a 19-year-old woman walked into a Walmart store in Midland, Texas. She connected her phone to the store's Wi-Fi. Then she made a call to her sister. At first, it seemed like an ordinary check-in. But within moments, the tone of the conversation shifted. Caitlin sounded afraid. She told her sister that the man she had traveled to Texas with was making her feel unsafe. She said he had tried to force himself on her. While still on the phone, Caitlin sent a location pin, showing exactly where she was inside the store. Then suddenly, the call ended. According to her sister, Caitlin had noticed the man approaching. She hung up. In the moments that followed, a few messages came through, each one reinforcing the same fear. She said he was angry. She said she didn't trust him. And then, nothing. No more calls, no more messages, no confirmed sightings. From that moment forward, Caitlin Dennison vanished. Caitlin Marie Dennison was born on August 7, 1998, in Reno, Nevada. To those who knew her, she was vibrant and full of personality. Friends described her as someone who could make people laugh effortlessly. She was outgoing, social, and quick to form connections. But the person closest to her was her younger sister, Rachel. The two were separated by just over a year in age. Because of that, they grew up almost like twins, sharing schools, friends, and experiences. They spoke nearly every day. If something exciting happened, Caitlin would call that if she needed advice. She would call that if she was bored, she would call. That constant communication made her sudden silence all the more alarming. Life at home wasn't always easy. Their father worked long hours, and their mother struggled with alcohol dependency. Because of this, Caitlin often stepped into a protective role within the family, especially toward her siblings. She carried responsibility at a young age. Despite those challenges, she maintained a strong social presence and remained deeply connected to the people around her. She also had a very distinctive appearance. Caitlin had multiple tattoos, including small designs on her fingers and wrists. She often wore bold rings and had several piercings, nose piercings, stretched earlobes, and sometimes a septum ring. Her style made her recognizable. But beyond her appearance, there were deeper struggles. At certain points in her life, Caitlin battled depression. Those struggles left visible marks, but according to her loved ones, they were only one part of who she was, not the whole story. What people remembered most was her energy, her humor, and her ability to connect with others. Sometime in 2017, Caitlin met a man. Exactly where they met has never been clearly established. Some reports suggest it may have been at a club. Others mention a fast food restaurant in Reno. What is known is that the two stayed in contact for several months. But there was one major problem. Caitlin never told her family his name. She never showed them a photo. The only detail she shared was that he worked as a truck driver, likely connected to the oil industry in Texas. That lack of information would later become a major obstacle in the investigation. In early January 2018, Caitlin made a sudden choice. She decided to travel to Texas to meet this man. Before leaving, she gathered personal belongings she had stored at a friend's house, clothes, makeup, and other essentials. She told her sister about the trip. But she also made an unusual request. She asked Rachel not to tell the rest of the family. Why she made that request has never been fully explained. On January 9, 2018, Caitlin boarded a flight from Reno to Midland, Texas. She arrived around midday. Investigators believe the flight likely included a layover, possibly in Las Vegas or Phoenix. There were also reports suggesting she may not have had formal identification with her during the trip. While uncommon, airlines can sometimes verify identity through alternative methods for domestic travel. After landing, Caitlin met the man she had been communicating with. Authorities believe she spent that night in his RV, located in the West Odessa area, a region known for temporary housing tied to oil field work. By the afternoon of January 10th, Caitlin had been in Texas for less than a full day. At some point, the RV was moved to another location. That same day, they stopped at a Walmart on North Midland Drive. Inside that store, Caitlin made the call that would become the last confirmed contact. After leaving Walmart, investigators believe they visited at least 2 other locations. A Domino's Pizza in Odessa, a local adult club where Caitlin may have been seeking employment. After that, the trail goes cold. 2 days later, Caitlin's family reported her missing. On January 12, 2018, her sister and father filed a report in Reno. But it quickly became clear that the most critical events had taken place in Texas. The case was transferred to authorities in Midland. Investigators were eventually able to identify and locate the man Caitlin had traveled with. He was interviewed. His explanation was simple. He claimed that Caitlin had left on her own. According to him, she packed her belongings during the night and walked away while he was asleep. He said he didn't know where she went. As the investigation unfolded, several challenges emerged. One of the most significant involved surveillance footage. Caitlin had been confirmed inside Walmart. But by the time investigators requested the store's security footage, months had passed. The footage had already been deleted. The same issue occurred with airport cameras. Without flight details, footage that could have shown her movements was lost. These missing pieces of evidence may have held crucial answers. Caitlin's phone activity also presented challenges. She frequently used prepaid services and relied on Wi-Fi rather than traditional cellular networks. This made it difficult for investigators to track her movements through phone records. At one point, a woman came forward claiming she had given Caitlin a ride. Authorities considered the sighting credible. But where that ride ended has never been publicly clarified. Months after her disappearance, a video began circulating online. It showed a distressed young woman ringing a doorbell in the early hours of the morning. She appeared frightened and disoriented. Some believed it could be Caitlin, but investigators later confirmed it was not her. The woman in the video had escaped a separate situation and was seeking help. For Caitlin's family, it was a brief moment of hope, followed by more disappointment. Over time, authorities confirmed several key details. The man Caitlin traveled with has been identified. He worked in the oil industry. A Ford F-250 truck was associated with him. However, many questions remain unanswered. In 2020, the case received renewed attention from a Texas ranger.
A lot of people are asking us to make a video with more details because they don't have a Facebook page, so that's going to be this video. Caitlin has these 2 tattoos on her 4th finger. She is the letter M, and then above it, an alien head. On her other finger, she has this zodiac sign. She would always wear big rings like this. On one of her wrists, she had the Eye of Horus, as well as these little stars. On her other wrist is the Libra scales. Caitlin also has stretched lobes, a second ear piercing, a nose piercing on each side, and sometimes wears a septum. She was also known for wearing the little tattoo choker. This is also Caitlin's natural hair color right here, but she usually bleached it. This photo is Caitlin without makeup. This shows Caitlin with heavy makeup as well as her nose piercings that she would wear. She has a freckle right below her lip.
In 2024, a major search operation was conducted in Midland County. Law enforcement searched a specific area of land using K-9 units. Despite the effort, no remains were found. Today, Caitlin Dennison has been missing for years. Her case remains unsolved. Her family continues to search for answers, sharing her story, raising awareness, and urging the public to come forward with information. Even the smallest detail could make a difference. There is one final detail that makes this case even more heartbreaking. 10 years before Caitlin disappeared, her cousin, also 19 years old, was abducted and killed. Although investigators say the cases are not connected, the coincidence is devastating. 2 young women from the same family, the same age. One story has answers. The other still does not.
The conversation was...
We've been getting a lot of messages about what you guys can do to help us in our search for Caitlin, so here's a couple things that would really help us out. The first and most important thing you can do to help us is donate and share our GoFundMe. We rely on the public's donations to be able to hire outside help, pay for ad space, and other sort of testing. The next thing you can do is follow our Facebook page, Find Caitlin Dennison. It has all of the information that we know, as well as our own personal tip line and email. It also has the link to the GoFundMe. It's been over 5 years since we've seen or heard from Caitlin, but we're not giving up.
What happened after that phone call inside Walmart? Where did Caitlin go? And who knows the truth? Until those questions are answered, this case remains open. And a family continues to wait. Memphis, Tennessee, November 2nd, 2024. The morning Elijah Johnson found his sister's car, the air over Brennan's storage facility felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. As if it knew what waited inside Unit 47. Elijah stood before the half-open metal door, chest tightening, breath coming thin and sharp. The padlock lay on the ground, sliced clean through. The tarp was already pushed back. Beneath it, a dark blue 1995 Honda Civic, Tennessee plate 739 KM. A car he had memorized down to every dent and scuff. The same car that had vanished 8 years earlier, the night his younger sister, Kesha Johnson, disappeared. And in the driver's seat, still buckled, slumped forward, skeleton framed in shadow, sat a body in dark blue nursing scrubs. Elijah's entire world narrowed to a single screen. But before that day, before the shock and horror and truth finally clawed its way into the light, we have to go back to where this story truly began. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Famous Crime Cases, where we uncover stories that challenge what you think you know about humanity. October 15, 2016. At 23 years old, Kesha Johnson was everything Memphis hoped its young people could be. A nursing student at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. Dedicated. Gentle. Right? She worked nights at Regional One Health Hospital, and though exhaustion always tugged at her eyes, her smile never dimmed. Her brother Elijah, 11 years older, practically raised her after their mother died. He was a mechanic, a quiet, steady presence who called her every night after her shift. That night at 11 p.m., she texted, "Heading home. Tired. Love you." Elijah replied, "Drive safe. See you tomorrow for breakfast." It would be the last message she ever sent. 15 minutes later, she should have been home. But her Midtown apartment remained dark. No sign of her car. No sign of her. By 1 a.m., Elijah was calling nonstop. By 2 a.m., still nothing. By 3 a.m., panic pushed him out the door. He drove to her apartment, hoping for any sign. None. Her car wasn't there. By sunrise, he was standing inside the police precinct filing a missing person report. The officer on duty was sympathetic, to a point. "Give it time," the officer said. "She's 23. Maybe she stayed with a friend." Elijah felt something icy settle inside him. "Kesha doesn't disappear," he said. "She doesn't ignore my calls." The police searched the hospital garage. No car. Security footage showed her leaving at 11:07 p.m., walking to her Honda Civic, and then nothing. No cameras on the street. No witnesses. No trace. A young black woman missing in Memphis. Another statistic in a city drowning in them. But Elijah refused to let her be one. Detective Robert Hayes was assigned to the case. Experienced. Methodical. But limited. He interviewed co-workers and friends. All offered the same portrait. Kesha was kind, driven, grounded. No enemies. No secret boyfriend. No reason to run. Weeks passed. Leads dried up. No sightings. No vehicle matches. No phone activity. Nothing. By early 2017, the case was unofficially stagnating. By 2018, Detective Hayes retired. The case became one more cold file on a shelf. Elijah never accepted it. He visited Kesha's apartment every Sunday, dusting her bookshelf, straightening her nursing textbooks, washing the same coffee mug she used every morning. He refused to let dust settle where her life once thrived. He organized search parties, posted flyers yearly, updated social media pages, called hospitals and morgues across 3 states. He hired private investigators, 3 of them. All left him with the same conclusion. She was likely dead, and he might never know how or why. But Elijah never surrendered to that possibility. Hope became his ritual. Searching became his religion. Sometimes, in his darkest moments, he'd find himself driving alone through Memphis at 3 a.m., staring at passing cars, half expecting, half praying, to glimpse the familiar shape of that Honda Civic. Years slipped by. Grief calcified into something harder, something that kept him awake nights and haunted him during the day. Until November 2024 came, carrying something he never expected, a clue. On November 2nd, Elijah scrolled through Facebook, eyes numb from lack of sleep, when he saw it. Storage unit auction, Brennan Storage Facility, Saturday, 10 a.m. It wasn't unusual for him to go. Auctions offered distraction, sometimes useful parts he could resell. But that morning, something tugged at him. He drove to the sprawling complex on Winchester Road. Rows of orange metal units glinted in the late morning sun. About 30 people were already gathered, regular bidders, hustlers, curiosity seekers. The auctioneer lifted his clipboard and began. Unit 47 was next. The lock had already been cut by staff, per auction procedure. A faded tarp covered something large. Bidding starts at $100, the auctioneer said. Elijah felt an inexplicable pull. He raised his hand. The number climbed. At $500, the crowd fell silent. Sold to bidder number 14, the auctioneer announced. Elijah paid, collected the key, and left. He told himself he'd pick up whatever was inside tomorrow. But by 2 p.m., curiosity gnawed at him. He returned. He rolled open the door. Dust swirled in soft sunlight. The tarp lay wrinkled on the floor. And then he saw it. The dark blue Honda. 1995. Tennessee license plate 739 KL. His legs buckled. He staggered forward, bracing himself on the cold metal doorframe. Breathing hurt. His vision blurred. He peered inside the driver's window. A skeleton in hospital scrubs. Seatbelt still fastened. Head tilted forward, as if exhausted after a long shift. Elijah's scream echoed through the storage facility like a wounded animal. His hands shook so violently he could barely dial 911. My sister, she's here, she's dead, please help. Police arrived quickly. Yellow tape went up. Officers swarmed the unit. The car was sealed off. Elijah was escorted to a patrol car, not in handcuffs, but not free to leave either. The nightmare was just beginning. At the precinct, fluorescent lights hummed coldly overhead. Elijah sat alone in a windowless room, fingers laced tightly, eyes unfocused. 2 detectives entered. Detective Mark Sullivan, sharp-eyed, skeptical. Detective Nicole Carter, calm, patient, methodical. Bad cop, good cop. Hours of questioning followed. How did you know the car was in that unit? Why did you bid on it? Have you ever visited Brennan Storage before? Did you know Todd or Kyle Brennan? Did you kill your sister? Every question pierced him, but he answered all the same. No, 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 no. And finally, with tears streaking his face, absolutely not. I spent 8 years trying to find her. His grief could not be faked. Even Sullivan saw that. Still, the police were under pressure. A body hidden for 8 years. A brother who just happened to find it. A suspicious unit. A forged lease. The media swarmed the story within hours. Headlines spread across Tennessee. Body found in storage unit after 8 years. Brother finds sister's remains by accident. Elijah's life collapsed under public scrutiny. But then someone stepped into the room who would change everything. A civil rights attorney known for dismantling corrupt cases. Angela Brooks, tall, poised, relentless, walked into the precinct the next morning with a folder thick as a textbook and a presence that filled the room. Detectives, she said coolly, my client will not answer another question without me present. And unless he's being charged, we're leaving. She guided Elijah out of the station like she had been doing it her whole life. Then she began digging. Angela subpoenaed storage facility records. As she sifted through paperwork and timestamp logs, a pattern emerged, one so meticulously hidden it almost stayed buried. 1. The rental agreement for Unit 47 was signed in Kesha's name. 3 days after she vanished. A forensic handwriting expert later confirmed. The signature was forged. 2. The payment logs showed monthly cash payments for 8 years. All recorded in the middle of the night. Suspicious, unprofessional, and unlikely to be coincidence. 3. Security footage within the facility, limited but functional, revealed the same man entering after hours dozens of times. Kyle Brennan, son of the facility's owner, Todd Brennan. Kyle had worked security at Regional 1 in 2016. Co-workers described him as overly friendly, pushy, obsessed with certain nurses. One of those nurses was Kesha. Kyle quit his job 3 days after she vanished. When detectives dug deeper, they discovered more troubling details. Kyle had a history of stalking complaints that never escalated to formal charges. Todd had multiple protected units in his facility that were never auctioned, regardless of payment status. Unit 47 had been marked "Do Not Auction" for 7 years. But someone, an assistant manager unaware of the flag, overrode the mark. And that mistake cracked open a murder hidden in plain sight. A criminal case was risky. Too much time had passed. Evidence was scarce. DNA degraded. Kyle's fingerprints? None recovered. So Angela pivoted. She filed a civil lawsuit, wrongful death, fraudulent concealment, emotional distress, and negligence. Depositions were damning. Todd Brennan denied involvement but fumbled under pressure. Kyle took the fifth repeatedly. Employees testified about suspicious behavior, locked logs, midnight visits. The trial began April 7, 2025, in Shelby County Circuit Court. Judge Martin Reeves presided. The jury, diverse, attentive, sat silent as Angela delivered a powerful opening. This case is simple. This is about a young woman who rejected a man's unwanted attention. And that man made sure no one ever found her. Until now. Witness after witness built the mosaic of truth. Hospital co-workers testified to Kyle's fixation. Handwriting experts confirmed the forgery. Financial auditors revealed inconsistent records. Storage employees described unsettling instructions from Todd. Then Elijah took the stand. His voice cracked. His hands shook. But he never faltered. I looked for my sister every day. They hid her 20 feet from a busy street. They let me suffer for 8 years. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned. Liable. On all counts. $20 million awarded to Elijah. Money he never wanted. Money that could never replace his sister. But it was truth. And truth, for the first time in 8 years, finally felt like justice. Elijah buried Kesha at Elmwood Cemetery beside their mother. Over 100 people attended, nurses, old classmates, community leaders, and families of other missing persons who saw in Kesha's story a painful echo of their own. At the graveside, Elijah spoke through trembling lips. She was taken from us at 23. I spent 8 years searching. And now she's home. The man who killed her may walk free, but the truth is out. And the truth will never die. The media exploded. The FBI opened an investigation into Brennan's storage. Kyle Brennan moved to Florida, living quietly but under constant public scrutiny. Todd's business collapsed under lawsuits and federal audits. And Elijah? He turned grief into purpose. He founded the Kesha Johnson Foundation, a nonprofit supporting families of missing persons. It provided search assistance, legal aid, social media campaigns, and grief counseling. Every Sunday, Elijah visited Kesha's grave, bringing sunflowers, her favorite. He updated her on every cold case the foundation helped, every family given closure, every mother reunited with a missing child. Kesha, he would whisper, they won't go missing in silence anymore. I promise. In the end, it wasn't perfect justice. Kyle Brennan never faced handcuffs, never faced prison. But the truth surfaced. The lies collapsed. A brother's devotion shattered an 8-year illusion. and a $500 auction bid ended one of Memphis's quietest tragedies. Elijah Johnson lost his sister, but he gained a mission that would save others. Because sometimes justice isn't a verdict. Sometimes it's the truth finally being heard. And sometimes that truth begins with something as ordinary as a dusty storage unit on Winchester Road, and a brother who refused to stop searching. Inside the thick concrete walls of one of the United Kingdom's most heavily guarded prisons, a routine morning was unfolding like any other. Inmates assigned to work duty were moving through a recycling workshop, sorting materials under the watchful supervision of prison officers. The facility was Prison Franklin, located in County Durham, in the northeast of England. Known for housing some of the country's most dangerous offenders, Franklin is classified as a Category A prison, the highest security level in the British prison system. Only prisoners considered an extreme risk to the public are held there. But on the morning of February 26, 2026, the ordinary rhythm of prison labor suddenly erupted into chaos. Among the prisoners working that day was Ian Kevin Huntley, a man whose name had become synonymous with one of the most disturbing crimes in modern British history. As Huntley leaned down beside a crate filled with recyclable material, another inmate approached him quietly from behind. What happened next triggered a full-scale emergency response inside the prison. The attacker struck Huntley repeatedly with a spiked metal pole, delivering brutal blows to his head before staff could intervene. Within minutes, alarms sounded throughout the facility. Officers rushed to restrain the attacker while medical staff fought to keep Huntley alive. He was quickly transported to hospital with devastating injuries. Within hours, news of the incident began spreading across the United Kingdom. And when the public learned who the victim was, the reaction was immediate. Because the man who had just been violently attacked inside one of Britain's most secure prisons was one of the most notorious criminals the country had ever seen. Prison Franklin sits on the outskirts of Durham, surrounded by layers of fencing, security checkpoints, and surveillance systems. It is not an ordinary prison. Facilities like Franklin exist specifically to house offenders who are considered too dangerous for standard prison environments. The inmates held there include serial killers, terrorists, and criminals whose actions have shocked the nation. Every aspect of life inside such a prison is tightly controlled. Prisoners move through the facility only under escort. Work assignments are supervised closely. Even simple daily routines are carefully structured to minimize conflict. Despite these precautions, violence can still occur behind the walls. And sometimes, it involves prisoners whose names have already become infamous across the country. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Famous Crime Cases, where we uncover stories that challenge what you think you know about humanity. One such inmate had been held inside Franklin for many years. His name was Ian Huntley. To understand why Huntley was such a controversial prisoner, it's necessary to go back more than 2 decades. In August 2002, 2 10-year-old girls disappeared from the quiet town of Soham, in Cambridgeshire. Their names were Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. The girls had left their homes to buy sweets and were expected to return shortly afterward. But when they failed to come back, their families quickly raised the alarm. What followed became one of the largest missing person investigations in British history. Police, volunteers, and members of the public joined together in a desperate search effort that stretched across fields, rivers, and nearby villages. 4 days, the entire country watched and hoped for good news. But that hope soon faded. Just over a week after their disappearance, the bodies of the 2 girls were discovered near an RAF base outside Soham. The nation was horrified. Investigators soon focused on a man who had initially appeared to be helping with the search. That man was Ian Huntley. At the time of the murders, Huntley worked as a school caretaker at Soham Village College, the very school the 2 girls attended. In the early days of the investigation, he had spoken to the media and even described seeing the girls shortly before they vanished. But as detectives examined the evidence more closely, his story began to fall apart. Eventually, police uncovered enough evidence to charge him with the murders. In 2003, Huntley was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Later rulings determined that he must serve a minimum of 40 years before even being considered for release. The case had devastated the country. And inside prison, Huntley quickly became one of the most hated inmates in the system. Because of the nature of his crimes, Huntley was frequently targeted by other prisoners. In 2005, another inmate threw boiling water over him in an attack that left him with serious injuries. 5 years later, in 2010, a different prisoner used a sharpened metal object to slash at Huntley's neck. Despite these assaults, he remained alive and continued serving his sentence within the high-security prison network. By the mid-2020s, Huntley was still incarcerated at HM Prison Franklin. But by that time, another extremely dangerous offender had entered the prison system. And eventually, the paths of these two men would cross. The second man involved in the prison attack was Anthony Russell. Russell was born on April 16, 1982. By the year 2020, he was living in Coventry, in the West Midlands of England. At the time, he was already known to local police and had struggled with addiction and instability in his personal life. But in October 2020, his actions escalated into a series of crimes that would shock investigators and horrify the public. Over the course of just 1 week, Russell carried out a violent crime spree that left multiple victims dead. The first victim was a man named David Williams, who was 32 years old. Russell had become convinced that Williams was involved in a relationship with his girlfriend. Police later determined that this belief was completely unfounded. But by the time investigators uncovered the truth, it was already too late. On October 21, 2020, Russell attacked David Williams. Using a lanyard, he strangled him. After Williams stopped moving, Russell concealed the body inside his flat, pushing it underneath a bed. The remains stayed hidden there for several days. When police eventually discovered the body, they documented dozens of injuries. But Russell's violence did not end there. In fact, the situation was about to become even more horrifying. 2 days later, David Williams' mother, Julie Williams, began to worry. Unable to reach her son, she contacted West Midlands Police and reported him missing. Julie simply wanted to find her son. But investigators later believed that Russell contacted her and admitted what he had done. The meeting took place inside Julie's home in Coventry. What followed was another brutal attack. Russell assaulted Julie Williams with extreme violence. When police eventually entered the property, they found her lying on the living room floor. She had suffered more than 100 injuries. By that point, Russell had committed 2 killings. But the violence was still not over. After leaving Coventry, Russell began moving between towns across Warwickshire in an attempt to avoid capture. During his escape, he approached an elderly man at his home, asking for directions. When the man turned away momentarily, Russell struck him with a brick, causing severe head injuries. Russell then stole the victim's Ford C-Max and drove away. Not long after that, he arrived in the town of Leamington Spa. It was there that he met Nicole McGregor. Nicole McGregor was 31 years old. She was also pregnant. According to evidence later presented in court, Nicole told Russell about the pregnancy and even showed him a scan image of her unborn baby on her phone. The two had only met shortly before the attack. But Russell convinced her to walk with him toward a wooded area called Newbold Common. Prosecutors later suggested that he lured her there with promises of drugs. Once inside the woodland, Russell attacked her. Afterward, he killed her by applying pressure to her neck. Her body was dragged through thick undergrowth and abandoned near the River Leam. 3 days later, her remains were discovered. Investigators also learned something deeply disturbing. After Nicole disappeared, Russell approached her partner and pretended to help search for her. At one point, he even made a chilling remark about the unborn baby. By then, he already knew she was dead. By late October 2020, police were dealing with a rapidly escalating crisis. 3 victims had now been identified. Authorities launched a large-scale search across multiple towns. Russell continued traveling in the stolen Ford C-Max, but his attempt to escape eventually failed. In the early hours of October 30, 2020, police located the stolen car near Burton-upon-Trent. Officers approached cautiously. Inside the vehicle, they found Russell asleep in the back seat. He was arrested immediately. When first questioned by police, Russell remained silent. At one point, he even kept a blanket pulled over his head during interviews. But later, he admitted responsibility for the killings. Russell pleaded guilty to the murders of David Williams, Julie Williams, Nicole McGregor. However, he denied one major charge related to the attack on Nicole McGregor. Because of that denial, part of the case proceeded to trial. The proceedings were held at Warwick Crown Court. During the first trial in February 2022, the jury was unable to reach a verdict on one of the charges. After hours of deliberation, the jurors informed the court that they were deadlocked. A retrial was ordered. Just 1 month later, the case was heard again. This time, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict. In March 2022, Russell was sentenced. The court imposed a whole life order, the harshest punishment available under British law. This sentence means that the offender will never be eligible for parole. During sentencing, the judge described Russell as extremely dangerous and manipulative. Russell refused to attend the hearing. Prison staff reported that attempts to transport him had created dangerous situations. From that moment forward, he would spend the rest of his life inside the prison system. Eventually, he was transferred into one of the UK's highest security facilities, the same prison where Ian Huntley was already being held. By the mid-2020s, both men were incarcerated at HM Prison Frankland. Inside the facility, prisoners sometimes carry out supervised work duties. One of those duties took place in a recycling workshop, and it was there that the two offenders would ultimately cross paths. On the morning of February 26, 2026, several inmates were working inside the workshop. Among them were Huntley and Russell. At one point during the work shift, Huntley bent down beside a crate. Moments later, Russell approached him from behind. According to reports, Russell had armed himself with a spiked metal pole. Without warning, he began striking Huntley in the head. Prison staff quickly intervened and restrained Russell. Huntley was rushed to hospital with catastrophic injuries. Doctors later reported severe brain trauma and multiple skull fractures. He was placed in an induced coma. For several days, he remained in critical condition. Then, on March 7, 2026, Huntley died in hospital at the Royal Victoria Infirmary in Newcastle. He was 52 years old. Authorities identified Anthony Russell as the suspected attacker. According to reports, he allegedly shouted, "I've done it. I've killed him." Some sources suggested that Huntley had previously attempted to bully Russell inside the prison. If that was the case, the situation ended in a way Huntley may never have expected. Police launched a full investigation and began preparing a case file for the Crown Prosecution Service. Additional charges could still be considered. News of Huntley's death quickly spread across the United Kingdom. The reaction was divided. Some people expressed satisfaction, believing that Huntley had received a form of justice. Others pointed out a more complicated reality. The man accused of killing him was himself a convicted triple murderer serving a whole life sentence. In other words, this was not a story of heroism or justice. It was the result of two extremely dangerous individuals encountering each other inside one of the most secure prisons in the country. Prisons like Frankland exist to keep society safe from offenders who have committed the most serious crimes. But removing someone from society does not erase the danger they pose. It simply means that danger now exists within prison walls. And when individuals capable of extreme violence are placed in the same environment, incidents like this can occur. In places like Frankland, the reality can be unsettling, because sometimes it becomes a situation where monsters are locked away with other monsters. And when those worlds collide, the consequences can be deadly. On May 19, 2024, just after 4 p.m., deputies with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to a remote desert area known as Pajarito Mesa, located west of Albuquerque in New Mexico. The call was simple but urgent. Someone had found a body. Pajarito Mesa is not a place people stumble upon by accident. The terrain is dry, wind-beaten, and uneven. Access requires navigating dirt roads that twist through open desert. There are no storefronts, no security cameras, no steady stream of traffic. It is the kind of place where the silence feels permanent. When deputies arrived, they located a teenage male lying in the sand. He wasn't moving. Initial observations suggested he had been there for some time. Investigators identified at least one apparent gunshot wound. The case was immediately classified as a homicide. But at that moment, they didn't know who he was. They didn't know how he got there. They didn't know who he had been with. And one question loomed over everything. How does a 16-year-old end up dead in a remote stretch of desert miles from home? Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Famous Crime Cases, where we uncover stories that challenge what you think you know about humanity. As detectives began reconstructing the final 24 hours of his life, what unfolded was a chain of events filled with calculated decisions, digital footprints, shifting loyalties, and consequences that would permanently alter multiple young lives. Remote homicide scenes present unique investigative obstacles. Desert wind can scatter physical evidence within hours. Wildlife can disturb remains. Tire impressions can vanish. Without nearby surveillance systems or witnesses, detectives must rely heavily on forensic recovery and digital data. The first obstacle was identification. Without knowing who the victim was, investigators could not determine motive, trace relationships, or analyze potential suspects. They had no starting point. That changed when the family of a missing 16-year-old boy came forward. The victim was identified as Jesus Quintana Cota, also referenced in some reports as Jesus Urim Quintana Cota. Because of his age, officials were careful with confirmation and family notification before releasing information publicly. The discovery occurred on May 19th, but the public announcement was not made until May 30th, 11 days later. That delay raised community concerns. Authorities explained that investigative integrity and proper family notification came first. Behind the scenes, detectives were already working backward. When a body is discovered in an isolated location, investigators must determine whether the death occurred there or whether the site was used to conceal it. If Padrito Mesa was the primary scene, the timeline would be contained. If it was secondary, the geographic scope would widen dramatically. Digital evidence soon became central. Phones, text messages, vehicle movements. As detectives analyzed communications, a pattern began to surface, and it pointed not toward unknown adult criminals, but toward other teenagers. On June 27, 2024, just over a month after Jesus was found, 3 suspects were taken into custody. They were Daniel Madano Garcia, 18, Dominic Marquez, 17, Mariana Gomez Salinas, 18. Although 2 of them were legally adults at the time of arrest, court records indicated all 3 had been juveniles at the time of the crime. They were initially charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, conspiracy, tampering with evidence. These were not minor charges. First-degree murder in New Mexico carries the possibility of life-altering sentences. During early detention hearings, prosecutors emphasized text messages that suggested coordination before and after the incident. Judge Joseph Montano ordered the suspects held pending trial, stating that the state had demonstrated they posed a potential danger to the public. Sheriff John Allen and District Attorney Sam Bregman later addressed the case publicly, linking it to broader concerns about rising juvenile violence in the Albuquerque area. At the time, the juvenile detention center population was nearing capacity. The community wanted answers. But the story did not begin in the desert. Prosecutors later pointed to an event that allegedly occurred on April 1, 2024, nearly 6 weeks before the homicide. According to court documents, Jesus was accused of firing shots at a white Chrysler 300 belonging to Daniel Madano Garcia. That incident was reportedly documented by Albuquerque police before Jesus's identity as a homicide victim was publicly known. At first glance, the April shooting and the May homicide appeared unrelated. Prosecutors would later argue otherwise. They suggested it provided context, possibly motive. Retaliation? Confrontation? Escalation? Investigators examined digital communications between the teenagers in the days leading up to May 18th. Text messages time-stamped, preserved would become a cornerstone of the state's argument. On May 18, 2024, Mariana Gomez Salinas contacted Jesus. According to prosecutors, she invited him out under the pretense of a date. At the time, Both Mariana and Jesus were 16 years old. Court filings state she drove him to a lookout near Dennis Chavez Boulevard and Trisco Vista, the first confirmed meeting location that day. Daniel Madano Garcia and Dominic Marquez were already waiting there. According to the criminal complaint, Jesus was assaulted at that location. He was then forced into Mariana's vehicle. At that moment, the legal landscape shifted.
Kind of explain a little bit about what's going on. Okay. I'm gonna have another detective come in here, and he is going to show you a series of photographs about that other person you told me about, the guy with the sombrero. And he's going to explain it. He has no clue. He doesn't know anything about this case, so even if you ask him, I just have to use someone that has no idea about the case present this to you. If you see him, great. If you don't, or not, once that's done, I'm going to come in and...
Is that going to happen soon?
Yes, it's going to happen in about 2 minutes. You're going to come in, and then when he's done, I'll come in, I'll finish up with you, and then it will be done.
So it'll just be like pictures?
Yes. And don't feel like you have to choose. If you see the person, great. If you remember that person, great. If you don't, it's not a big deal. Don't feel like you have to choose someone. Other people, in this case, they talk as well. So, we're just trying to find out who this other person is.
Yeah. You guys got Dominic and Daniel, right?
Yes. So, and we're just trying to find out who that other.
Under New Mexico law, forcibly moving someone against their will can constitute kidnapping, a charge separate from, and in addition to, homicide. Mariana's defense attorney later argued she believed the plan was only to rob Jesus, not to harm him. He stated she had been manipulated by the boys and implied that refusing to cooperate might have placed her in danger. Prosecutors countered that the digital messages demonstrated planning. Judge Montano later referenced those communications as evidence of coordinated intent. What began as a supposed date had become an abduction. But it was not over. According to court documents, the group picked up an additional individual described as an unidentified older Hispanic male. Prosecutors alleged that this man pointed a rifle at Jesus. Authorities stated that this individual may have been the actual shooter. This detail introduced a complicated dimension. If the alleged trigger man was not one of the teenagers, how would responsibility be distributed? Defense attorneys emphasized that the older man was not in custody. His absence became a focal point in proceedings. Still, the group drove onward, toward Padrito Mesa. The criminal complaint states that when the group arrived at the mesa, everyone exited the vehicle. Mariana later told investigators she heard fighting. Then she heard gunfire. Afterward, the others returned to the vehicle. Jesus did not. They drove away without him. The desert swallowed the silence. As the case moved into 2025.
Okay, Daniel, I don't think you're a bad kid. Cam, I got nothing against you. I don't know you. I've never met you before in my life. Okay? But right now is your chance to be honest about what happened. Because let me tell you, right now, you're facing a first-degree murder. That's life in prison. Yeah. You go away forever. Okay? You're 18. Forever's a long time. Yeah. Okay? That is a long time. Okay? So that's what you're charged with, because I haven't talked.
That's what I warrant for?
First-degree murder, kidnapping, robbery, conspiracy, and tampering. Yes. Cool. So we're going to talk about that. Okay.
It's first-degree murder?
First-degree murder, kidnapping, conspiracy.
What is that?
Basically, you worked with other people to do stuff. Tampering with evidence. That's basically you got rid of some stuff, you damaged stuff, you deleted stuff, that type of stuff. And then the kidnapping and robbery. Those are the two others. Okay? So why was Dominic wanting to unalive?
I don't know.
You do know.
I guess revenge for me, but okay.
Did you ask for it?
The three defendants took different legal routes. In September 2025, Dominic Marquez entered a no-contest plea to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, armed robbery, tampering with evidence, conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence. Judge Montano accepted the plea. Marquez faced a sentencing range of 12 to 22 years. He received 22 years, the maximum within that range. Mariana chose to go to trial. Her jury trial began in October 2025. After approximately 9 hours of deliberation over 2 days, the jury returned its verdict. She was acquitted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, armed robbery, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. However, she was convicted of kidnapping, tampering with evidence, conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence. Even without a murder conviction, kidnapping connected to a fatal outcome carries severe penalties under New Mexico law. She faced up to 22.5 years. Judge Montano sentenced her to 19.5 years in prison. Family members delivered emotional impact statements, describing Jesus as kind, intelligent, and deeply loved. They spoke about compounded grief, as he had already endured the loss of his mother before his own death. The courtroom carried the weight of irreversible decisions. Daniel Madano Garcia remains charged with first-degree murder and related offenses. At the time of the latest reporting, his trial had not concluded, and the unidentified older man, the alleged shooter, remains unaccounted for in public proceedings. 2 teenagers are now serving decades in prison. One awaits trial. One lies buried. All of them were under 19 years old. The case reflects how quickly conflicts can escalate in an era of digital coordination and impulsive retaliation. Text messages become evidence. Cars become instruments. Silence becomes permanent. In interrogation footage, investigators spoke bluntly about consequences. First-degree murder, kidnapping, life-altering sentences. They reminded the suspects how young they were and how long forever can be. The tragedy extends beyond a single act of violence. It encompasses the ripple effects, families grieving, futures erased, a community questioning how teenagers reached this point. How does something like this begin? Was it revenge for an earlier confrontation? Was it peer pressure? Was it fear? Or was it the culmination of escalating hostility left unchecked? Digital messages provided timestamps, but they could not fully explain mindset. They could not restore what was lost. Pajarito Mesa remains what it always was: quiet, isolated, windswept. But on May 19, 2024, it became something else. A place where a teenager's life ended, and where 3 other young lives began unraveling under the weight of adult consequences. Write in the comments section what your thoughts are on this case. Sarah Galvin was born on September 18, 1996, the youngest of 7 siblings. Raised in Sarasota, Florida, she experienced an unstable early life but found solace in the care of her maternal aunt and uncle. As a teenager, Sarah occasionally stayed with older siblings in Dinelon, described by those who knew her as caring and deeply loving, especially towards her young daughter Cora. Sarah worked hard to navigate life's many challenges. In 2014, at the age of 18, Sarah married Thomas Allen Ebersole and moved to Dunellen. The marriage was short-lived, with the couple divorcing on the 5th of November 2015. In the years that followed, Sarah supported herself through exotic dancing while living with a roommate. In Reddick, Florida, she shared custody of her daughter with Joseph Marilyn Meaton, the father of her child. Though Cora primarily lived with her father, despite setbacks, Sarah remained close to her family and especially her ready-to-lead ML together. Stir Michelle Tullis. The timeline of Sarah's disappearance began on March 2, 2023, around 7 p.m. that night. After finishing her shift, she contacted her sister Michelle asking for a ride home and to tell Michelle's children that she said hello when Michelle was unable to pick her sister up. Sarah walked to a nearby Circle K convenience store located at 17900 North Highway 441. Surveillance footage captured her buying snacks. At 10:11 p.m. on March 2, 2023, Michelle's phone buzzed with a message that would later feel impossibly heavy. It was from her younger sister, Sarah Gail Ebersole. Getting into a random truck with some cowboys. Hope they take me for a ride. At the time, it sounded impulsive. Maybe reckless. But not alarming enough to stop the night in its tracks. An hour later, Sarah would be seen alive inside a rural duplex in Reddick, Florida, laughing, snacking, watching videos, surrounded by people she barely knew. By 4 a.m., she had vanished. No ride history, no social media activity, no outgoing calls. Her phone would later be reset and wiped. One man connected to her last known night is now dead. Another has been arrested for lying to police. A third changed his story repeatedly. Yet more than 2 years later, no one has been charged. Sarah's daughter has now turned 7. She doesn't know where her mother is. And her family is still asking the same question law enforcement has yet to answer. What happened to Sarah Gail Ebisol? Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Famous Crime Cases, where we uncover stories that challenge what you think you know about humanity. March 2nd began like countless other workdays. Sarah, 26 years old, a single mother, had just finished her shift dancing at Café Risqué, a gentleman's club just off I-75 outside Gainesville. She was tired, ready to go home, and eager to rest before continuing her fight for custody of her daughter. Around 7 p.m., she texted her sister Michelle, asking for a ride. Michelle couldn't leave at the time. She was helping at her daughter's softball game. Sarah understood. She wasn't panicked. She said she'd figure something out. Usually, Sarah took Uber. That night, for reasons still unclear, she didn't. Her roommate was away at a women's veterans retreat, meaning Sarah would be alone at the apartment. Later, she told Michelle someone from work would give her a lift. According to what's known, Sarah did make it home briefly. She walked the dogs. She sent a few casual messages. Nothing felt urgent. Then, at 10:11 p.m., came the text that changed everything. Earlier that evening at 7:50 p.m., Sarah had sent a soft, unassuming message. Tell the kids I said hi. Tell them I love them. It didn't feel like a goodbye. Not then. Later, surveillance footage captured Sarah at a Circle K in Reddick just after 10 p.m. She wandered the bright aisles, picked up snacks and a drink, and walked back out into the dark parking lot. Outside, a black pickup truck waited. Inside were 2 men. Leonard Anderson. James Robinson. Sarah climbed in. That was the last confirmed sighting of her that night. The truck eventually dropped Sarah and James Robinson at a duplex on North U.S. Highway 441. The home was shared by multiple people. James Robinson. Shayla. Tisha McDermott. Sarah didn't know these people beforehand. Inside the house, accounts say they talked, watched videos, and ate snacks. On the surface, it sounded uneventful. But details begin to fracture almost immediately. At 1:24 a.m., Robinson texted another man. Tyrone Mormon. The message indicated that Sarah was there and asked if Tyrone wanted to come by. That alone raises questions. Why invite someone over specifically because she was present? According to those inside the duplex, Sarah supposedly left sometime between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. They claimed she ordered an Uber. Except there was no Uber. No ride history. No payment. No driver. Then the story shifted. The car was blue. An O black. A sedan. Maybe a Kia. Or a Hyundai. Or a Honda. One version said Sarah left briefly 10 or 20 minutes, then returned. Another said someone heard her outside but didn't see her. Nothing lined up. Then came the most disturbing admission. According to Michelle, James Robinson later confessed something chilling. He said Sarah did not walk to the car. He said he and Tyrone Mormon carried her. If that's true, it introduces a terrifying question. What condition was Sarah in when she left that house? Tyrone Mormon arrived at the duplex in a blue Hyundai Sonata. By 4 a.m. he left, with Sarah in the passenger seat. That moment Sarah leaving the duplex with Tyrone is the last confirmed sighting of her. After that, she disappears. For a short time, Sarah's phone continued to ping. Then something unusual happened. Her phone was reset, her accounts were wiped, access to her digital life gone. Michelle, refusing to wait, took matters into her own hands. She accessed Sarah's iCloud, Snapchat, Gmail, anything she could, and turned everything over to investigators. What she found was alarming. Sarah's phone was active until 2:40 a.m., watching YouTube videos. At 2:57 a.m., someone logged into her Gmail. Shortly after that, the device was wiped. If Sarah was awake and watching videos shortly before 3 a.m., how did she go from that to being carried out? By March 6th, The phone stopped pinging entirely. For months, Tyrone Mormon claimed he never met Sarah. He said he was out of town. Cell phone data proved he lied. On December 20, 2023, investigators uncovered surveillance footage from a 24-hour convenience store in northwest Marion County. It showed Tyrone and Sarah together at around 4 a.m. on March 3rd. Nearly a year after she vanished, Tyrone was arrested that day for lying to police. He posted bond. He has since refused to cooperate. James Robinson, the man who brought Sarah to the duplex, died in May 2024 due to substance-related issues. That removed one possible source of answers forever. The leaves. Shayla, Tisha McDermott, Tyrone Mormon, all among the last people to see Sarah alive. None have provided a complete, consistent account. Another troubling detail emerged. A third-party service traced Sarah's phone to Lake Livingston LLC, a massive 12,200-acre agricultural property in rural Florida. Michelle drove there herself. Law enforcement claimed they searched the area, but another county later said they never did. Jurisdictional confusion. Conflicting statements. No results. When Michelle searched Sarah's apartment, something authorities never did, she noticed key items were gone. A folder of legal documents related to Sarah's custody case. A teddy bear with her daughter's name stitched into it. A binder containing information about her ex. Also missing, cash. Sarah had told Michelle she was carrying over $1,000, possibly closer to $2,000, planning to use it to negotiate visitation with her child's father. That money has never been found. Sarah's ex, Joseph Matten, had a long, volatile history with her. She had filed restraining orders against him. She changed her phone number multiple times. She believed he had access to her devices through shared accounts. In January 2023, she bought a new phone to escape his surveillance. At the time she disappeared, she believed he didn't know her location. But after Sarah vanished, Joseph's behavior raised alarms. A friend claimed Joseph said, "Sarah is dead." That same day, Joseph was arrested for assaulting a 75-year-old man. Weeks later, he illegally re-entered a motel where he worked, rekeying 2 rooms. Michelle begged police to search them. They refused. Joseph later left Florida entirely, taking Sarah's daughter to Kentucky. He changed the child's name. And the name he chose matched that of a young girl murdered years earlier, in a case Joseph had once been questioned about. He has never spoken publicly about Sarah's disappearance. And he filed legal actions preventing her family from naming him online. Michelle organized searches, brought in cadaver dogs, contacted media, pushed for warrants. She faced silence, deflection, contradictions. 2 years later, investigators again labeled Tyrone Mormon a person of interest. Still no charges. No body. No answers. Sarah Gail Ebisol would be 29 years old today. Instead, she exists only in images walking into a gas station in a sequined tank top, unaware her life was about to stop. She wasn't just a dancer, she wasn't just a headline. She was a mother trying to get her child back, a sister who needed a ride home, a woman whose story refuses to disappear. Until the truth comes out, her family will keep asking. And so will we. Where is Sarah Gail Ebisol? If you found this story meaningful, consider subscribing to Famous Crime Cases for more real-life investigations and human stories.